Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur. I have 30 companies under my belt. 20 of those I failed at, 10 were scaled successfully, and I turned that roller coaster of a ride into my book, Fail Hard, Win Big, where I really talk about how embracing failures in business is the best learning tool you can ever have, and how the power of building custom software was the key differentiator in my successful ventures. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a nearshore software engineering firm helping existing development teams. And today we have a fun guest Ken Ringdahl, who has been an engineer turned advisor, consultant, many times CTO, managed global engineering teams of 500 plus people, been across the M&A world. Ken, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
If you would, Ken, give our listeners a couple-minute overview of the journey of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, I think so. I'm an engineer at heart, as you sort of said in the opening there, and I still consider myself, semi hands-on. I don't write code anymore. It's been at least I don't write code professionally or commercially. But
you got to
I
keep
started
your skills sharp, though, right?
Absolutely. But I started off in my professional career as a hands-on developer. I did some amount of hands-on development for about the first 12 years of my career. And I'd look at my career in a couple of different phases. The first phase, I was fortunate, even out of college, to get an internship at a small startup in the Boston area. I really got the fever for that world. I joined my first 4 jobs that I took as my career were all startups. They were small venture-backed startups. The last of which was I was engineer number 1. And that was something, I actually tried to found my own company in between there. It got incubated, but not funded. I started a family, went and got a real job. But that last one, I was literally engineer number 1. That was something I really wanted to do, was to put my fingerprints on something and build it. And that company was ultimately acquired by VMware. And I would say that's where,
Wow.
so that was probably, when I look at successes in my career, it's one of the real highlights of my career was building, that product from the ground up, writing the first line of code and getting that company acquired, and spending 4 years post-acquisition at VMware, where I learned a lot about, who I am today. And that's where my career sort of inflected into larger scale technical executive leadership roles, VP and above. And as you said in the beginning, a couple of times CTO now. And so, I still consider myself a technologist, an engineer. I really enjoy working with the architects and senior engineers and really all the staff. But that's where I am now, and I've settled into this role as a CTO of mid-stage software companies. I've been B2B software my entire career, and that's my niche, and I really, really enjoy it. I'm super passionate about what I do.
What a cool story. I love that. Developer number 1 of a company that was acquired by VMware. Congrats. That's awesome. Now tell us about your company, Emburse.
Yeah, so in Burstware, B2B software company, we are, for our customers, we're in the spend management and business travel management space. So we have a variety of products that go after largely office of the CFO and finance teams to help them really manage their spend. And the way we like to look at it is it's virtually everything but payroll. So anything that comes through employee expenses or an invoice, we have solutions there. Business travel is a large driver of corporate spend, and we provide a variety of products that help our customers manage that. And the solutions, expense management, invoice and AP solutions, travel booking solutions, all the way through, taking your trip and expensing that. And even in the middle, when you book a trip and take a trip, you can reshop that trip and try to find, better prices and savings for your company. We provide all those solutions, as well as some solutions that go with it, like payments and card solutions as well. So, we really run the gamut there in spend management and business travel management.
Gotcha. Now, how did you land as CTO? How'd you get this role?
Yeah, as I said, I grew up through the ranks as a software engineer, and I always had designs, as much as I started off as an engineer, really loved my days coding. I always wanted to be in a larger scale leadership role. I do enjoy straddling the business side world and the technical world. But specifically in Burst, when I landed in Burst, this opportunity came along. It started as a fantastic opportunity. It was the right sized company, a great opportunity, 20,000 customers, really well established business. But I saw a great opportunity to take the skills that I've developed, over almost a 30-year career and really do my part as part of the executive team to help elevate the company and grow the business and deliver value to our customers.
So did you apply online? Did you know anyone? No
Yeah,
doubt you were qualified. And, a lot of, CTO is a tough role. And CTO role's been pretty brutal. And I know our listeners always like to hear how others were able to land their roles as, in this chaotic time, applying online or on LinkedIn doesn't always get you a response.
you're 100% correct. Certainly a role like mine or similar executive roles. I mean, they typically aren't on LinkedIn. If you're applying from on LinkedIn, you're going into an empty basket somewhere
You're kind of
typically.
just column fodder where they can say it was
Yeah,
fair opportunity, right?
so our private equity firm, K1, they actually do a lot of their executive search and search for executive level roles in-house. And so they help their portfolio companies. And, I got contacted about a year prior. It wasn't the right time for me when they originally reached out, but I've been around long enough to know you keep everyone close and you never know when you need it. And, when the time was right, it came back around again. I already established that connection, and that's where I got sort of walked into the opportunity. And to be honest, it actually came together quite quickly because I had cultivated a relationship earlier.
So that's
Yeah,
great advice for others. Even if you're not ready, use those opportunities to build relationships.
100%.
Love it. Love it. Well, tell us about some fun tech projects you guys are working on at Emburse.
Yeah, I think any CTO today would tell you AI is at the heart of what they're doing. And certainly, I'm sure we'll get into our own use of AI, but I'll talk about, our use of AI in our products. There's really two things I'm excited about. One is, we've built in Burst AI, we've embedded it into our products. It's really interesting the way that we have built it in such a way that we can plug and play any LLM out there. As we know, the AI world is changing literally on a daily basis. GPT-5 is brand new.
Hard to keep
Um,
up.
it is very hard to keep up, and the next one is always better than the one before it. And so you
Yeah.
really need to be flexible and dynamic. And we built a foundation. As I mentioned, we have a broad portfolio of products, and we want to embed AI in all of our products and get leverage out of that. And if I talk about expense management specifically, we have different products that address SMB, mid-market, enterprise, but we don't want to have to build it multiple times, and we want to build it once and integrate. That's what we've done with Emburse AI. And so we have a combination of commercial AI solutions and our own open source LLM derivatives that we've built as well. And they're purpose built, different use cases. We have OCR, object character recognition. Everything for us starts on the expense side starts with either a receipt image or on the invoice and an invoice image. And it's about getting the text off of, the receipt or the invoice, categorizing it and being able to process it, take that load off of the end user. And so we've invested a lot of time to optimize that for our specific use case. And it runs very, very efficiently. So I'm really excited about what we've done with Emburse AI. And the other thing, Emburse has historically been a highly acquisitive company, somewhere in the order of 12, 13, 14 different acquisitions that we've done.
Wow.
And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have sort of a variety of expense products and a variety of travel products. And, historically, those have been sort of kept in their own lanes. And really the true value, and one of the things that really attracted me to Emburse was, being able to take that 1+1=3, bring travel, bring expense together, provide a unified solution, unified reporting to provide new value. So that is a big initiative for us at Emburse, and another thing that I'm really excited about.
So growing by acquisitions is fantastic. From a CTO perspective, when you're acquiring more products, you're acquiring more tech stacks, you're acquiring different things. How do you, I was going to say, how do you not pull your hair out? But you beat me to it.
Oh yeah, it's all gone. It's been gone for a while. And Burst did not do that to me. But you're absolutely right. I mean, M&A is for any CTO, whether you're getting acquired, I've certainly been acquired a handful of times in my career. I've done the acquiring quite a few times as well. And really, when I think about it from a CTO perspective, one, if I'm acquiring another company, my board, the first question they're going to be to me is going to be, okay, when can we see it integrated? And so that,
Mhm.
you're really in, and one thing that, I've been at Emburse now a little over a year. And one of the things that I focused on is how we build a platform. How do we build a environment kind of below the waterline? It's not customer facing, but it's really important to scaling the company long term and being able to get fast return on those investments, those acquisitions, many millions of dollars in those acquisitions. How do we plug it in? Both acquired companies partnering other new solutions and building that framework. And so it's really about one, how do you build a framework that allows you to move fast and build that for the long term? And then what is the fit? I think if I talked to you 10 years ago, I would have told you being multi-cloud is a really, really bad idea. I think in today's day and age, it is a reality of what you have.
Yep.
Most of our products run on AWS. We have a handful of products on Azure. And when you're an acquisitive company, they come with different tech stacks, different cloud platforms, and different AI solutions. And I think to sort of pause your roadmap and try to re-platform doesn't really drive a lot of customer value, and you're just going to be chasing your tail because the next one is going to sort of create that same problem again. And
Sure.
so I've kind of learned, sort of bring all these things together without replatforming and focusing on how to bring more customer value.
Awesome. Well, tell us about your engineering team. How many engineers do you have? Are you a remote, hybrid, in-person model? Where are they located? Tell us all that good stuff.
Yeah, I bet you probably already know this answer based on what we talked about of a lot of different
We
acquisitions.
did some
It's
back and forth, but we gotta,
100%.
educate the audience, right? We
Oh
got a
no,
bunch of
just just fa-
techies that are salivating over this.
Yes, 100%. So, as we talked about a bunch of different acquisitions, you can imagine those teams are in many different locations, many different tech stacks. But my team as a whole, just engineering, I do have a broader remit at Emburse. I look after our InfoSec and IT business systems, even our global technical support. But speaking just about engineering, we have about 200 people, and that includes our what I call platform engineering, or maybe better known as DevOps. About 200 people. That's inclusive of engineers, QA engineers, platform DevOps, SREs. So about 200 people, very distributed. We are US headquartered and have a good foundation of engineers in the US, but we have a large office in Toronto, Canada, a location in Spain, two locations in Spain, Netherlands, and in India as well. And we're very much hybrid. I think, many of the companies that were acquired along the way by Emburse, some of them had strong in-office cultures. The pandemic sort of changed a lot of that. I would say we're still in a period of evolution, but as we're doing more hiring, we are definitely hiring them around our core centers of excellence. And, that is largely Barcelona, Spain, Toronto, Canada, Dallas in the US, and Hyderabad, India as well.
So, kind of sticking with that hybrid model, where engineers can come in the office, whatever it is, that's kind of the growth plan.
It is. And I would tell you, someone who pretty much right up until the pandemic spent a lot of time myself in office. Most of my roles were local roles. And as a former engineer, I do really appreciate the ability to get in person on a whiteboard, have a, hallway conversation. Those things, those organic things are hard to reproduce over Zoom and, remote. But I've had hybrid teams. I've been very successful with hybrid teams, and you figure out ways in which to adapt. But I would say, long term, our approach and my approach on the engineering side is to try to co-locate. If it's not in the same city, in the office, it's in the same time zone, and those are the ways in which I've learned how to scale teams. And I believe really strongly in agile concepts and having co-located teams and teams that can maximize their collaboration time. And that really means building your team such that they can be in alike time zones and overlap their time of day as much as possible.
So, and you've led a lot of large global teams. What your approach to time zone issues, especially when kind of the core teams headquartered in the US?
Yeah, so there's a few ways to it. I do believe in the Amazon model of two pizza teams, small scrum teams, our core development teams, at least small scrum teams. We use Kanban, we use other, for other teams that may be less predictable and have less of a roadmap, maybe more disruptive over the course of a, 1 or 2 week period. But for our core dev teams, definitely co-locating them, somewhere between 4 and 8 people in those dev teams, and try to architect our software so that those teams can largely be autonomous. That is, as I've learned over the years and have tried to adapt the teams, I want my teams to be autonomous. The more dependencies, I think it might even been your CTO you had on the past talked about monolithic applications. And trust me, I've been around long enough that monoliths were the only thing that existed when I started my career.
I
And so
get it.
I lived a lot of that. And really, the more people you add into a monolith, you get less and less return from every engineer you add to it. If you can break that apart, obviously the microservices in the modern day, if you can have those teams have smaller services, own their delivery, be able to deploy the software when it's ready, hopefully ship multiple times a day or multiple times a week at least, and have API contracts or other contracts that you can strongly test so you can release your software and not worry about breaking someone else, whether it's your own products for your customers or your partners that are integrating, that is unlocks productivity and velocity unlike others. So bringing it back to your question of co-location, that is how I try to build my team so that I remove as many dependencies as I can. And that's what teams want at the end, right? They want to be able to control their destiny. They don't want to have to
Yep.
worry about that other team and that other team that we have to collaborate our releases. And that's when it becomes very hard to release. The releases become very heavyweight, and quite honestly, your
That's when I
failure
hear the
rates go
most
up
complaining.
100%.
When everybody goes like this and crosses their fingers and say they're waiting on the testing team or they're waiting
And
for the platform team or
And then when you release that and something goes sideways, you're now saying, oh crap, what was it that broke? Was it me? Was it you? Was it someone else? And you have to roll it back or try to figure out in production what went wrong. So small changes, autonomous teams, like absolutely solves a lot of the common challenges.
So in this day and age, Ken, with AI taking over everything, whether it's for an engineer to customize their resume to a specific job they're applying for, or to use it to assist in coding challenges, how do you screen and vet engineers for your team with all these nuances of, all the assistance they have to where you could drill
Yeah.
down into what their core knowledge and capabilities are?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is something I actually talk to my team a lot about because, on one side, you want everyone to be able to leverage these tools. When they come in and do their job, they're going to be using these tools. So let's actually make sure they can use those tools. But at the same time, a lot of these AI coding assistants and other AI tools, you want the person that's with those tools or orchestrating those tools to have the knowledge to know when they should accept what it's suggesting or maybe change it. And so it's really a combo. I would say first and foremost, the thing that I personally look for and I try to drive my team towards is I want sort of smart, hungry, humble engineers that are highly collaborative, back to that sort of small team, like you need to be able to work effectively as a team. And I see this often and certainly, at Emburse and even other companies, what I see is a very common problem with Agile is, people say they're doing Agile, but you have a team of individuals instead of a group, right? A group that has a common purpose to develop their software and deliver it together. And so that's where the collaboration comes in. I look for high collaboration. I'm a big proponent of shift left development. And in order to achieve that, you need developers and engineers that take on the responsibility of their code, that know how to test their code. Ideally, if they have test-driven development genes or at least experience, that leads to higher quality code. And I think all the CTOs and leaders of engineering have seen it. The cost of finding a defect and finding other issues further down in the pipeline, much more, especially production, really expensive to identify an issue in production. It's customer impacting. You got to bring it all the way back, right, left to right, and that goes for security as well. So I look for engineers that take ownership of their quality of their code. They're not shy to take on testing. I do fundamentally believe in having a QA function and having QA engineers that are doing automation for system level, functional level testing and performance and scale testing. But I want engineers to take ownership of their code. So first and foremost, I look at that. Now, your point about AI and those tools, we do coding tests, but mostly when we do an interview, we are getting that engineer side by side with our engineers, and one, seeing how they collaborate with our engineers, but also seeing how they think, right? I mean, good engineers are great problem solvers, and so presenting them with a problem to solve and see how they work through that problem. The other stuff is, quite honestly, is the easy part, like, writing code and all that. But how they
Yep.
collaborate, how they work with the team, how they're going to fit into our culture is, to be honest, it's paramount to everything else.
And great points. I've had the privilege of having some CIOs of universities on this show. And as the CIO of the university, they often oversee the computer science department. And they're frustrated as heck where companies are saying you got to teach the students to use AI in their coding. And universities are still trying to figure out how to get around the academic, political nature of
That's right.
no, that's cheating. And I mean, who would want to hire an engineer today who doesn't know how to use AI assistants? Interesting challenge.
It is absolutely an interesting challenge, and it's interesting times. It's the world is changing. As I said, I've been sort of in my professional career almost 30 years, and I would say there's no time in my career other than now that I've seen the landscape change so rapidly, and we're all adapting to it, to be honest.
Every single day, to say the least. So, as we're more than halfway through the year, what's the biggest technical and business outcome you're focused for the remainder of the year?
Yeah, I would say, we've got a really large roadmap. I mentioned, our more, driving more AI advancements into our products and delivering. Really, it comes down to delivering value for our customers. And we just see a fantastic opportunity to do more for our customers, solve their challenges, the bringing travel and expense together, which is really a big data problem. I mean, the travel world in particular is just massive, massive amounts of data and marrying that up. And so that's what we're really focused on, and some of the challenges as we look at the mid-year here and driving to hopefully close the year strong and have some really good momentum going into next.
So, what's standing in your way or could slow you down from reaching your goals for end of year? And in the world you live of the tech side of travel and expense?
Yeah, I think we're a growing organization. I think certainly talent is one of those. We're trying to grow our teams globally and getting that talent in seat while continuing to keep our roadmaps on track. That's a challenge for us, and really bringing these platforms together. We have some legacy platforms. One of the pros and cons of being a highly acquisitive company is you have some really modern platforms and you have some legacy platforms. Some of our products have been around for 20 plus years, and managing the tech debt and such that comes with it, but continuing to innovate and evolve those products. And for us, some of those products are very large scale products and platforms that we need to live on for the long term. Making advancements and modernizing those on the fly to a certain degree.
Let's talk about some hot topics. There's a buzzword going around in Silicon Valley around the 996 culture, meaning you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. It's been big in some of the Asian tech countries. Silicon Valley's starting to adapt it. The job ads for companies are pretty insane. It says you're working 6 days a week in office and the pay is not great, but you have the promise for equity. I think it's insanity. As a serial entrepreneur, I work more than most, but I don't know how you do that to engineers, to team members. What's your take on that? I don't know if you've heard the term 996 culture. It's kind of a latest buzzword going around.
I haven't heard the term, but I've seen stuff on LinkedIn specifically, and certainly some employers are actually not being shy about, hey, come join us. Like 60-hour weeks are the minimum. You have to be comfortable with it. and they're owning it. To their credit, they're owning it now.
They are being very straightforward about it, to
Yeah,
say the least.
yeah. So I think it's unrealistic to have those expectations. I think certainly, you know, as a CTO and as an engineering leader, one of my top jobs is to maximize the productivity I have for my team. I always like to say, you have a finite, your engineer's time is and developers' time in particular is a fixed asset. You only get so much of it. What you spend with that time is really what we're going to get out of it. And so I spend a lot of time myself and my leaders trying to figure out, hey, how do we, let's make sure our teams are prepped and ready. This is where some of the sort of agile planning and things come in. And I have been successful in my career implementing process, but enough process to be successful. And I think prepping teams and making sure that the work you're throwing at teams, engineers are ready to take on that work and that you're maximizing that. The 996, I think it's highly unrealistic to expect that. You're going to get it out of some of your engineers, the ones that, and maybe that's the other side of my job is it's my job to influence and make sure that our teams want to work really hard for Emburse and want to deliver value to our customers. And some of that is about growing their careers and giving them interesting work and engineers will work really, really hard if they know what they're doing ties to an outcome and they can actually see that outcome. So I spend a lot of time there too, is trying to tie, hey, look at what you all did as a team and here's the outcome. Draw a direct, bright line to it. And I think that's really critical of an engineering leader.
Yeah, I think some of that's insanity out there, to say the least. And certainly RTO mandates by big tech. They're now being brutal about it. That 5 days a week, no exceptions, and I don't care if you don't like it, leave. And although those companies tend to have the largest engineering salaries, I think it creates a good opportunity for the small to mid-sized companies who can be more human and down to earth, and yet
That's right.
still get great productivity out of engineers, but creating the right hybrid type environment where there's the good balance of everything. What's your take?
I think you're absolutely right. There is a good spot in the middle there somewhere. From being a sort of lifestyle business to being a hard charging, 996 company, somewhere in the middle there is a happy medium where you're driving productivity, you're driving your team, you're getting a lot of output, but it's not a country club at the same time, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all in business for a reason. I'm driven and all of us are driven for outcomes and have to deliver those outcomes. And so, there is a certain part of it that we have demands on our teams to deliver, but I think we also need to be understanding that people have lives and be able to manage that accordingly. Because if you make their lives miserable, they're either, they're not going to like their job. They may seek to leave. Ultimately, they may, quiet quitting is not a thing, or at least it's not a buzzword anymore. But
Yeah.
it's a form of that where, hey, look, you're not being nice to me, and I'm not gonna put myself out for you. So there's a balance there, and I think we need to try and tap into that.
But I'm seeing a reality set in that, number one, AI is not replacing software engineering. It's evolving the role, but AI can't do what engineers do, but it's a hell of an assist tool to help engineers be more productive, perhaps even be able to have smaller teams that could be more productive. That's my take. Agree, disagree? What's your opinion?
I do agree with you, Steve, and quite honestly, Microsoft released their top 40 list of jobs that will be impacted by AI. Software engineering was not on that list. Surprisingly, much to my surprise, that was not on the list.
Where a couple months ago, I'll bet that would have been on the list.
Absolutely. I think, there is this, misconception that, a lot of these AI coding tools are going to replace developers. As you say, there's a lot of PR coming out of really, really large companies. Salesforce has talked, Mark Benioff has talked about it. Mark Zuckerberg has talked about it. I don't see it yet. I am constantly, encouraging my engineers to leverage the tools, but But the reality is it's very much still an assisted world. AI is a great thinking partner. It's a collaborator. It's a
Yep.
supercharger, but it is definitely not now, or I don't see it in the near future, something that will replace, but it is something that will absolutely enhance. And to be honest, like, for any engineer that's not embracing it, they're also going to be left behind because
I,
they're going to
I
just
couldn't
fall
agree
behind.
more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Embrace it or get out. I mean, you have no choice, to say the least. Well, Ken, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. Thank you for sharing your story, your philosophy on leading teams. This was a lot of fun. Before we wrap, what no BS advice do you have for tech leaders out there who are just trying to build, scale, or just survive in these interesting times?
Yeah, I would maybe two things that I have leaned on myself, to get to where I am at this point is one, trust your gut. I find many times, my gut opinion and impression is almost always right, and so trust your gut. And the other thing I would say is don't be afraid to seek help from others. I mean, there's a misconception about CTOs are the smartest person in the room. I am far from the smartest person in the room, but I would tell you I'm incredibly resourceful, and I lean on subject matter experts to help me every day to do my job. And so, use the resources available to you, the people, the talent, the technology. Don't be afraid to admit you don't know all the answers or have all the answers, because nobody does. So that's where I'll leave it.
Great advice, Ken. Thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you liked the show, go ahead and hit subscribe and follow us. If you didn't like it, well, we're just going to tell your competitors about it so they can get the edge. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.